Ted Cruz is drawing a lot of heat for a speech he gave over the weekend. He was in New Hampshire speaking to his supporters, and he horrified a little girl. Here's the line that set the internet ablaze.
The Obama-Clinton foreign policy of leading from behind. The whole world's on fire. The world is on fire. Yes, your world is on fire. But you know what? Your mommy's here, and everyone's here to make sure that the world you grow up in is even better.
Now, what the media is mostly interested in is that the little girl reacted like, oh my god, the world's on fire? And so they're saying that he scared the little girl, and we're gonna get to that. In fact, we have video of the little girl and the mom on Fox. But before we get to that angle, I do want to talk about what he's actually saying there. It's the idea that the world is in a horrible state, that, you know, there's ISIS and there's other terrorist groups, and we don't know what's going to happen. It's a scary time. And I will grant, you know, that it is actually a bad time. There's military conflict in multiple parts of the world. It's a conflict unlike what we've really dealt with before. It has some similarities to our fight against Al-Qaeda for a number of years, and yet it does seem to have inspired more lone wolves. And so it is a sort of new situation. But the idea that you then should go, okay, the world's on fire, so we need Ted Cruz, or any Republican, that's a really odd thought. That's an odd idea to sort of present even to your supporters. Think about what he thinks is wrong with the world right now. He thinks, you know, you've got Syria, you've got Iraq, you've got Iran, and you've got possibly Russia as well with the situation in Ukraine. So in Syria, they want to throw more troops in there. In Iraq, they want to throw more troops in there. They want more boots on the ground. When, if ISIS is the problem, it was the boots on the ground in Iraq over the last decade and a half that created that problem. So it's an interesting solution to the problem to then do more of what caused it in the first place. With Iran, which they see as a huge threat, especially if they were to develop weapons of mass destruction, their solution is to attack it. War with Iran is a solution to the problem of Iran being kind of threatening. If they're threatening, it's because we're worried about a war with them. The solution is war with them. That's sort of interesting. Syria is an insane quagmire, obviously. It's difficult to know who we should be supporting in this conflict and how we should be supporting them, if at all. His solution would be more troops on the ground. That's what the Republicans seem to be advocating. And then with Putin, they weren't happy with how Obama reacted to the situation in the Ukraine. They kept saying you need to be tougher. They refused to say exactly what they would do if they were president, but they seemed to be saying we should be willing to engage in war against Russia. So the world is on fire. Their solution, throw gasoline over the entirety of the globe, apparently. But let's return to the little girl. Here is the mom and the little girl speaking with Ducey.
She looked up from a game that she was playing on my phone, and she repeated the line that he had used, "My world's on fire?" And there was a big backlash on the fact that he had supposedly scared her, and in reality, she looked at him as a firefighter or a hero to a 3-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And she was...
Did she ask you whether the senator was like somebody on her favorite show on Nickelodeon?
Yes, Paw Patrol, Marshall. She has him right here.
Yeah, she's on the phone right now as well. That's good. That'll keep her distracted while we do this pesky interview. All right, so after
Stop
Ted...
laughing at me.
There you go. You heard her.
I'm playing my game.
So as Ted Cruz is giving his speech, and then he responds to her, then as it turns out, the mainstream media said that Ted Cruz terrified a little kid, he scared her, he startled her. Is that true?
No, absolutely not. No, she really did. She looked at him as he was a hero, that he was going to put the world that was burning out. He was going to be the firefighter. She looked at him like he was going to save her.
So that was a fun little clip. Man, what has Ducey sung to that interview happened on his show? But I understand they want to get the perspective of the mom, I guess, and the little girl. And the mom is obviously going to defend Ted Cruz. She went to a speech with Ted Cruz. She's clearly a Cruz aficionado. She enjoys a little bit of Ted. And so I'm not surprised that she defended him. And look, honestly, was the girl terrified? No, I don't think the girl was terrified. I don't think the girl cared at all. The girl couldn't, she was on TV, live TV, and she couldn't even look up from her phone. In fact, she seemed angry that the live news broadcast she was on was interrupting her game. That's how kids are. And she felt the same exact way during the speech. She just responded, "Oh, the world's on fire? Gotta send more pigs flying it." Yeah, like that's not, she doesn't actually care. And so it is weird that the media is focusing on that rather than the apocalyptic messaging of Ted Cruz. But also, by the way, did you notice there, it said mainstream media takes shots at Ted Cruz. That's what the graphic on Fox was. I understand that Sarah Palin is going to criticize the mainstream media, but Fox is going to They say that they're the biggest, most watched mainstream media outlet in the world. They certainly make a lot of money. They have lots of viewers. If they're not mainstream media, what exactly is at this point? And so it's an odd sort of lack of ability to self-identify as what you truly are there. But that aside, there is one other thing that I want to return to that's a little bit depressing. Obviously, the idea that the world is on fire and Republicans are the solution, that's more distressing. But there's something that's depressing as well from another part of his address on at that speech in New Hampshire. So let's roll that.
Look, I think there is an urgency to politics today that is unlike anything any of us have ever seen. It is now or never. I don't think we've reached the point of no return yet, but we're close. We are close. And I believe if we go 4 or 8 more years on this same path, we risk losing the greatest country in the history of the world.
And this is, as someone who has to follow politics quite a bit, and you know, I've been through a few presidential elections, a few cycles of that in the past, that this is the most stereotypical, cliched line from a person running for power in the party that's out of power. And we've never faced conflict like we have. The problems we face, we've never faced before. It's like, why do you even bother giving that speech? And the fact that it actually lands, that people are like, yeah, you're right, this is worse than it's ever been before. We need to get Obama out of there. It's worse than the Cold War. It's worse than the fight against the Nazis and against the Imperial Japanese. It's worse than that. It's worse than when we try to break free from Britain's oppression. It's worse than that. Look, the situation in Syria and Iraq is rough, and there are other conflicts going on in different parts of the world. But it's not worse than that. It's not worse than our initial years in Iraq when we were in that quagmire, when we had 100,000 troops or more there. It's not worse than that. It's not worse than the Nazis. And look, I get that Ted Cruz is an actor. He is delivering his lines. That's what you have to do. You always have to say that this is the most important time ever. If you don't make the right choice in the next election, the world's going to explode. I get that. But look at the audience in that clip. These aren't 18-year-olds. They aren't like, well, man, this is the first time we've really been addressed directly by a presidential contender. Those are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old people who have been hearing this every 4 years for the entirety of their lives. And yet they're still eating it up. They're still buying that bullshit. And so, of course, like, that's why politics is the way it is because people don't learn. 4 years go by, 8 years go by. You go through your whole life listening to politicians deliver the same stupid, cliched lines, and it doesn't sink in. Wait, I've heard this before. I've been here before. I am Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. I'm waking up and I'm being told the same bullshit, being given the same empty promises that I will solve all of the problems. When it comes to war, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to healthcare, Ted Cruz doesn't have any solutions. The Republican Party doesn't have any solutions. I wonder if the Democratic Party even has any solutions. So we gotta wise up or we're gonna be hearing a lot more speeches like this for the rest of our lives.